Hi guys, it's been a while. I've actually promised some of you that I would do a Photoshop tutorial. So if you have the Adobe Photographers package, which I know quite a few of my friends do, but they pay for it and only use Lightroom, this should be helpful to you so that you can jump right into Photoshop and use the other half of your payment. So without further ado, let's jump into Photoshop and let's learn some new things. Well, hopefully.
What's left of me?
Okay, we are now in Lightroom. I'm going to teach you basically the bare essentials of what you need to know in Photoshop to have a first step into it, okay? So don't expect the whole color grading tutorial now. Don't expect to change this photo into teal and orange yet. We will get to there sometime. But for now, I feel like the most important thing you need to understand about Photoshop is the concept of layers and layer masking. First thing, let's open Photoshop. There are a few settings that you should be aware of. So one thing is I like to launch it that way, edit in Photoshop from Lightroom, because that actually allows me to import that back automatically into Lightroom once I click save. So usually this dialog will pop up where it states that the embedded photo is of a different color space than the working color space. So usually we want to be in sRGB. So we should convert this to the working color space. Don't worry, I'm going to show you just to be sure. Hit edit. Doesn't matter what you did just now, just hit edit and go to color settings. Alright, and just make sure that your working space is in RGB, sRGB. This is important because as you can see in the description, sRGB is the default for web work, blah blah blah. Okay, basically it's the most limited color space, color gamut they call it. So you always work with the lowest common denominator. So next thing, hit image and mode and make sure that you are in 8 bits. This is actually not super critical, but it helps with your computer processing. So if you do not have the latest computer, this will help keep performance up. So let's get started. Let me introduce you to Photoshop as a whole. So I think first what you will want to look at would be this panel here. Let me see. Yep, this one here. Alright. That is the, I guess you can call it the stationery box. That's where your brushes, your pencils, your eraser, all the stuff that, imagine if you're an artist, you pick up, it'll be there. So that's your toolbox. And now focus here onto the bottom right. Yep, here. That is the layers panel. So in the layers panel, it will show all your layers. For now, we only have one background. And I want you to focus on right at the bottom here. Yep, all this. This is a new layer. So you click that and you'll produce a new layer, and you'll always be transparent. Sometimes we want a filled layer, but most of the time it will be transparent. And the next most important thing will be here, this half shaded circle. It's how you bring up an adjustment layer. Adjustment layers are pretty much what you normally see in Lightroom. Stuff like the brightness, the curves, the contrast, the hue, the color. These are things that you can adjust in the photo, so that's why it's called an adjustment layer. But the beauty of it is, later I'll show you, you can actually adjust the intensity through the opacity. And also there's this thing called layer masking, which means only apply it at certain areas. The next one, this Japanese flag here, well, it's not Japanese flag, but that's a layer mask, alright? When you click that, it adds a layer mask to your layer. And that will allow some very amazing things that you will love, and that's why you will start to prefer Photoshop over Lightroom. So let's start by bringing up an adjustment layer, and let's bring up the curves. The curves is pretty much the single most important adjustment you can find in any editing program. I will explain how it works. So basically, on the curve, for the horizontal axis, we have, say, 0 to 100. This is the brightness of the image. So all the dark parts of the image are here, and then the brightest parts of the image are here. And on your y-axis, you actually have the output. Alright, so you can see that, let's say if we wanted something that is level 50 in brightness, it will be here, right? And the output currently is level 50 in brightness here as well. So you can see that's why there's a diagonal line. Your base image is a diagonal line. Basically, your 0 is coming out with 0, your 50 is coming out with 50, and your 100 is outputting 100. So we can split this into somewhat of a, maybe here and here, we can say so. We can actually call this zone the highlights. We can call this zone the midtones, and here we can call it the shadows, right? So you can actually place a point wherever you like, 1, 2, and 3 points, and you can actually shift it up or down to make it brighter or darker. Okay, so let's get out of this teaching mode or whatever it is, and let's see some real life examples. In a curve, let's say I chose to add a point at roughly my shadow, mid, and high. Alright, don't worry, I've notched it a bit, but doesn't matter. Now look, if I shift the shadows up, you can see the dark parts of the image getting brighter and darker. If I shift it up, it's brighter. If I shift it down, darker. Same for the mid. So this only affects the mid-tones, and then this will only affect the highlights. Right? Pay attention to the sky. Yep, those are the highlights, right? Your mid-tones are mostly your skin. And then the darks will be, or look at the shadow of the face or the hair. So you can see how this works already. With that understanding, let's delete all these points and go back to a straight diagonal line, which means we are not affecting our image. This is where we really want to use what we call the layer mask. The layer mask is basically placing the effect that we choose on certain areas of the picture. So if this is a curves layer and this is my layer mask, alright. So one more thing, sorry. In here, this is always the layer mask. The effect is always here. Okay, so for our layer mask, you can see that now it is white, completely white. So the concept of layer mask is basically, if it is white, it's going to show the effect, and if it is black, it's not going to show. So let me take a brush here. Here is the brush tool. Over here, this brush tool. Now let's pick up a brush and make sure that you can see this, they call it foreground and background color. Make sure it's black and white. If it is not, click on the little icon here, alright, and it will become black and white. So this layer mask is already white, so let's change it to black. But for now, if we paint, nothing is going to happen, because let's open up the curves again, the left side, and let's see, nothing is changing. So let's put in a test effect. Let's bring down. Alright, so we want to darken. Now click on the layer mask. If I paint black, it's removing the effect. Remember, black is what we don't want, white is what we want. As I paint, you can see that it is removing the effect. A quick way to change the brush is to hold alternate and hold right click. If you're on a Mac, alternate and option interchangeable. As in, if you're on a Mac, it's option. On PC, it's alternate. Drag right and left to change the size of the brush. And see, now we can remove the effect from areas that we don't want the effect. This is how the layer mask works. So if you understand that, you can actually see how alright, let's click on this eye to turn on and off the layer. You can see how it only affects the areas that are white. Look at the preview here. Can you see? It's the areas that are white are where the curves is affecting it. So this is clearly a step up from Lightroom already. Of course, in Lightroom, I know you can open a new brush and do it. One thing you should understand is that Lightroom is not very efficient performance-wise. So if you stack, say, 5 or 6 brushes, your computer will lag to the point where you won't be able to do any good work. So you will want to bring all this minute, more detailed work into Photoshop. So let's just delete this entire curves layer. Okay, and let's put in a new curves layer. For these curves, we've already learned how we can use the layer mask to effect it. So let's learn some shortcuts now. Now let's say I wanted to brighten a certain part of the image only. So I'll push up the curve. However, I just only want a certain part. So it would make sense if I had started with a black background. So select the layer mask, hit Ctrl I, and that inverts the mask. In fact, Ctrl I inverts anything that can be inverted. So the picture itself can be inverted as well. Just for a test, if you want to see that, we can select the background. Ctrl J is duplicate. So we duplicate it and Control I. See, we can invert the background. So it inverts everything that can be inverted basically. So let's just delete that and turn back on our curves. Now, why did the curves not activate even though we turn on and off? That's because our layer mask is black. So this time, let's pick the brush again, change it to white, and let's say I only want to affect my face. So I'm gonna paint on my face. That's it. Easy. Beautiful. Ooh, nice. So here, I wanted to explain flow to you. Now you can see that when I paint, if you hold alternate option and click on the layer mask, you can see strictly where you painted on the mask. You can see that largely, of course the edges are a bit blurred because I have been using a soft brush, but the main portion, the moment I click on it, it forms a perfect white. Now if flow was 10%, what it means that it will take me 10 strokes to get it perfectly white. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you understand that, it means that you have to put in more repetitions to get to 100%. But this is a good thing, right? Because sometimes we don't want to immediately apply 100% at one shot. We actually want to apply a bit more, maybe in the middle, a bit less at the side. So let me delete this layer mask. And remember, this Japanese flag looking thing is the layer mask button. Let's put a new one. And it's affecting the whole image because it's white. So Control I to invert. Now we have our flow at 10%. So let's zoom in. By the way, alternate and scroll wheel zooms. And now let's start painting nicely, okay? So maybe perhaps this time I only really want the eyes. Notice how I can make a few strokes and see how the effect hits. See that? So I can be a little more liberal with my application. See, I can brighten certain areas that I like. See how as I make each pass, the teeth gets whiter and whiter and brighter and brighter and brighter. So you can use this to your advantage. It's kind of like art. You know, like a pencil shading. You don't want maximum darkness immediately, right? I want to explain something about brightening and dark, and is the word darkening? Brightening and, well, making something darker. So let me open a new image. New. Okay, so just on a blank piece of paper. Now I'm going to paint a gray circle, okay? So let me see. Okay. So gray, 50% gray. I'm gonna make it really hard for now, okay? The effect is not strong because I was at 10% flow. Haha. Okay, bam. There we go. Here is a gray circle. If I were to do the same thing, so let's bring out a curve and let's brighten it, okay? And we invert the mask because I only want to paint certain areas and show you. Let's call this dodge. Have you heard of the term dodge and burn? In photography, dodge and burn just means brighten and darken. We got to sound a bit more professional, so dodge. So now I want to paint white on the areas I want to dodge. But you notice the cursor is wrong. Why? Because I have not selected my layer mask. I'm not painting on the layer mask. I'm painting on the curves adjustment layer. But the curves adjustment layer is not a layer, right? So you can't paint on it. So select that. And now my paintbrush comes out. Now I want a soft brush, alright? Because I'm an artist, I need to paint softly. Okay, just kidding. But let me massage a little bit of a bright spot here. Can you see the circle is turning from 2D to 3D? Not fully yet, but it's a little more 3D. Okay, so let's add another curve. And this time we do the opposite. So I'm going to darken it. And same thing, I'll invert. So let me darken this side for you. Alright, let's darken. Alright, and then let's paint it in. Do you see the ball is more 3D now? So I should darken that portion. Yes, don't worry, if you're not an artist, just this example will be enough to show you to understand. Can you see that I have now painted a sphere and it's no longer just a grey circle? Let's have a look. So if you alternate click on the eye, it means show this layer only. Okay, so show background only. This is what we started with, and that's our finished product. Can you see we have moved from 2D to 3D? What really happened here? Well, let's have a look, shall we? Okay, so I brighten this portion. Alright, so as you can see, the brightened portion pops out. Right, it pops out. And the darkened portion went into the paper. Alright, so with this knowledge in mind, do you see how we can make something more 3D? So now let's go back to our paper, sorry, not paper, our picture, and the same thing can be done here. Let's delete that previous curves layer that we did, for example. And now, okay, now I'm going to draw some lines because I'm going to teach you makeup contouring. Yes, it might sound like a joke, but I'm not joking. So let me bring up a transparent layer, okay? And let me paint with black and white. Basically, you can see that if I wanted my face to be more 3D, I'm going to depress in the already depressed parts, and I'm going to pop out the already popping out parts. So basically, I'm gonna let me I think just now I did not change the flow, but I changed the opacity, but okay, it doesn't matter. The difference is that if I put opacity at 10%, it will max out at 10%, but flow at 10%, if I stroke 10 times over, it becomes 100%. You get it, right? Okay. Look, I can depress this part. Should I depress here? No, because that's a bad feature. We don't want that, right? Sides of the nose, yeah, to make it sharper in a way. It's up to you if you want to depress here. This is personal choice, but usually I don't do it. Some people like to depress here to make the cheeks pop a little bit more. We can have that. Here, can you see that there's a depressed zone here? Yeah. Okay, and I guess just to technically this is a depression as well, yeah. Okay, and then now let me paint in white areas that we're gonna highlight. So can you see that this is popping up? Obviously here. Now I could make this pop up, right? I can counter the eye bags that I have, my beautiful eye bags. Alright, you know, here is obviously popping up, right? Now a lot of people don't notice this, but this is popping up and this is popping up. Okay, and here. So what I'm showing you here are regions where generally we will dodge and burn to make the face more 3D. And also, if you are a female and you're listening to this, then this is exactly where you should put your highlight and your darker colors, and then you take your beauty blender and then just blend the hell out of it. Okay, so this is how you should contour a face, and this is what makeup artists do. So of course we're not going to draw such ugly lines, right? So I'm just going to delete that, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to curves. We're just going to bring up the level, right? But we will Control I to invert the layer mask. Okay, so this one, let's call it dodge. You can double click on the text to change the name, yeah? Double click to rename. If you double click outside of the text, you get a blend if, layer style blend if box, but I won't be teaching this today because this is slightly more advanced, and actually I use this every other layer, but we'll come to that in a bit. I mean, next lesson maybe. Okay, so let's do that. Now select the layer mask. Make sure white is selected because I want to paint white for the areas I want the curve to brighten. And now let's drop flow to 10%. You can drop it to 2 or 3%. In fact, that's what most professionals do, but for the sake of time here, I'm just gonna do it fast. Alright, so target the line. Where is my... Make sure your brush is on the softer setting. Don't use a hard brush, use a soft one, okay? Alright, I have a bit there. I have a bit here. Yeah. I have a little bit here. And like I said, I wanted to get rid of my eye bags, so let's do that, yeah? Oh, you can see how it's already coming out here. Okay, so you have to be careful with the size, but yeah, it's not really rocket science, just go with the flow. Alright, and see, remember I told you a little bit of the lips there, a little bit there, and some at the chin. Alright, my lovely fat chicks. Alright, now it still looks somewhat natural, but you can already see the effect. But if you can't, let's turn on and off the layer. Can you see how the face is popping out a lot more now? So don't worry, if you find the effect too much, like I said, look at this here, go down to opacity and just lower it. So this is another beautiful thing about Photoshop that wins Lightroom. You can still, even after making all your adjustments, you can control the strength of it. So see, 0, and that's 100, and then in between, you get where I'm going? Yep, okay. So we'll leave it at 100 for now, and then we're going to pull up another layer, and this time it's burning, so sorry. So similarly, let's rename it to burn, and it's affecting the whole photo, we don't want that. So invert the layer mask, white as the foreground color, because white applies the effect. And let's go to town now. So where can we burn? Well, you know what, surprisingly, oops, missed the line. Why not burn the eyebrows? I mean, ladies put in all the color black in, right? So let's do that. They also do on the eyeliner, right? But now my brush isn't fine enough. So there's another way to do that, but we'll come to that in another lesson. Like I said, technically we burn here, you see? It makes my face look sharper. You can burn in here a little bit to create the depression there. And here, let's make my nose sharper. Can you see it happening? Alright, so let's look before and after. Bam, wow, like especially the nose, wow, that one is like really intense. So no worries, we went overboard, but what can we do about it? Take the opacity down, right? So just slowly inch it back up till you're satisfied. Same, go down to the dodge layer, same thing, inch it up to a point where you're like, yeah, that's still pretty natural, I don't mind. Okay, now select these two. It's the same as Excel. You can control click to select whichever layers you want, or if you want everything and all in between, like for example all three, click here, shift and click the top. Okay, so select these two, control G to make a new group. Now turn on and off the group. Now let's zoom out, let's just have a look at the effect. Do you see? Do you notice how my nose has become sharper? My chin is sharper. See, these are things that you can do to enhance your features. Yeah. So I think I'm going to end the lesson here, because for now you should really practice and wrap your head around the concept of layer mask, on using the white paint, on using the black paint, and what it represents on the layer mask. Okay, and I hope that this helps you take your photo editing to new heights. Well, there's a few other tricks that we can do, not just on the curve layer. So let's have a look at some other adjustment layers, just a quick additional other thing that we can do. Alright, so perhaps we can put hue saturation. It comes out with another dialog box. All of these adjustments, you can feel free to play with it, because every time you put one of it, it'll just create a new layer, as you can see. So perhaps I want to remove red. One thing about the hue saturation curve that's awesome is you can click on this and you can click on the color that you want to remove. Let's just click on my cheek, okay? And we have red. And you see it's actually selecting a spectrum of colors from somewhere of this magenta looking one all the way to yellow. So you can actually fine tune that as well, but we won't touch that for now. Let's just look at, say I want to desaturate the reds. Yeah, see, if I pull it out, it's desaturating the reds. So perhaps, yeah, I find my face too red. I want to desaturate it a little. Maybe to this point. It's just an example, okay? So, let's zoom out. Now, if I turn on and off the layer, my face has been desaturated, but all the other red objects around have also been desaturated. So how do I contain this hue saturation effect to only my face? I think you have the answer. Let's invert the layer mask, bring up a brush, white to apply the effect. Alright, and apply it. Alright, now it's not applying strongly because flow is at 10%. Let's go 100% so you can see the effect immediately. Yeah. So let's just paint all over. There we go. Now if we zoom out, have a look. It's only affecting your face. So basically, to recap, the main thing you have learned today is how to use a layer mask and how you paint white and black over it to select whether or not you want the effect. Okay, so selective editing is basically the entire gist of editing with Photoshop. So you have to master this, and once you are very familiar with it, next tutorial onwards I can just go create a layer mask and you will know what to do. Okay, so for now, gotta sign off here. Have fun.
So casually keep diving into